thank you very much for inviting me to this wonderful conference. I don't know where to start. Maybe I should start at the beginning, when 10 million refugees started coming back from India into Bangladesh after it became independent in 1972. And the country was devastated. The war of liberation has ruined the infrastructure, roads, railways, schools, health facilities were in ruins. And Bangladesh had a new government, which was inexperienced in running a state. So at that time, I came back from England. I used to work for Shell Oil Company as an executive, and I decided to do something about relief and rehabilitation work in Bangladesh. So I chose an area of about 200,000 people to do relief and rehabilitation work immediately after the liberation of Bangladesh in 1972. And after about a year of building houses, providing livelihood for people, fishermen provided with boats and nets, there was this question: relief is not a solution. Poverty, which was endemic in that area, we thought that we couldn't quite walk away from this extreme poverty in rural Bangladesh and to the people to their own devices. So we decided basically to commit ourselves for a long-term poverty alleviation of the people in that area. And at that time in 1972, I remember reading a book called The Pedagogy of the Oppressed. It was written by a Brazilian educator, Paulo Freire. He came out with the idea that the poor people, truly empowered, in the sense that if they should not be looked at as passive recipient of somebody's aid, but as active actors in history. In other words, they should be the solution to the problem that they are seeking, that they should be the actor in history. So BRAC started organizing people for power, providing conscientization, providing education in rights, legal rights, human rights, and organizing people that way. We tried to find solution for poor people by poor people themselves. So that's how BRAC's rural organization started growing in Bangladesh. Our next problem was, even if you develop a replicable model in a small area in Bangladesh, who is going to replicate these models? Can we find other actors to replicate these throughout the country? Is the government is the agent for bringing about change in your society? More and more, we started expanding into other areas with our rural development program, organizing people for power in the villages, organizing better agriculture, fisheries, improving fisheries, developing livestock. Mainly also started looking at human condition, how to improve those. The women, we were organizing women for power in the villages, started savings and credit program, and expanding these in number of different areas. In 1979, it was the Year of the Child, International Year of the Child. And Bangladesh had a mortality rate, infant mortality rate of 248 per thousand. So a quarter of our children died before their 5th birthday. And we thought that what could BRAC do in order to cut down infant mortality? We found that only one disease, diarrhea, killed more than half the children. And so we decided that we would if we could treat or at least teach one woman in every household in Bangladesh how to make oral rehydration fluid, which would stop or at least mitigate diarrheal dehydration and mortality, then we could probably bring down infant mortality to a large extent. So we decided to go to every household in Bangladesh, teach one woman one-to-one how to make oral rehydration fluid at home and how to administer it. So we first recruited 300 women workers who would go from house to house and start teaching. So the first 30,000 households were done, and we looked at what percentage of women were using oral rehydration fluid in order to protect their children from diarrheal dehydration. And we found that only 6% were using those oral rehydration fluid. So we didn't know exactly what was happening, and we later found that the teachers, the women that we trained as oral rehydration workers, did not themselves believe in oral rehydration as a therapy. So therefore we found that if the teachers themselves were not convinced, then of course they cannot transmit the message properly. So we brought these 300 women back to Dhaka to retrain them, to try and convince them that this is efficacious in terms of rehydration. And then after that, once we have deployed them again, we found that the next 30,000 households were done. We fielded another group of monitors. We found that it went up from 6% to 18%. Even then, we were not happy, but then we then fielded a group of anthropologists in the households to find out why people with knowledge do not use oral rehydration. And we found that what was happening was that we have completely ignored men from our program design. It was entirely focused on women. And so men apparently were not convinced that this is the most efficacious treatment for diarrhea, and were discouraging their women in the household for using oral rehydration. So therefore, we then redesigned our program. So we then started organizing men in the villages, started having meetings in the marketplaces, in the mosques, in the temples, wherever men congregated in the villages. We taught about oral dehydration and how it affected diarrheal mortality. And then, of course, we also followed it up with radio and television spots, and the oral rehydration therapy usage started going up. It went up to about 60%. And then also program was redesigned also to provide incentives for women who were teaching. The quality of teaching improved, and therefore as the program progressed, the program also improved in quality, and diarrheal mortality declined quite fast after that. So as a result of which, Bangladesh now has got the highest use of oral rehydration in the world, and diarrheal mortality has come down dramatically. And over the years, of course, then while we were doing this over 2 years, from 1979 to 1989, the government of Bangladesh decided to immunize all our children. So BRAC took up half the country to work with immunization program. So almost over a 4-year period, the government and my organization BRAC covered the entire country with immunizing children. And we attained universal child immunization by the year 1990, when there was a conference in the United Nations on children. And our president was invited to that because he has achieved the universal child immunization. And since then, of course, what has happened over the years is that decline in infant and child mortality has also brought in decline in fertility. And I remember in 1972, when we looked at the TFR, women the children per women, average women produce 6.4 children. Now the TFR has come down to 2.7. And we are hoping that by the year 2015, we should achieve the replacement level fertility of 2.2. And in some areas of Bangladesh already, replacement level fertility has already been achieved. So Bangladesh, despite all kinds of bad publicity due to floods, cyclones, corruption and all that one gets in the electronic media and the print media, Bangladesh has done fairly well in terms of a lot of human indicators over the last 35 years. As I said, that infant mortality has declined. Cohort is mentioned 75 as our under 5 mortality rate. In fact, it has gone down to 65 in the latest data that we have collected. So, and then infant mortality, in other words, under 1 mortality has come down to less than 54. So the things are progressing in the right direction. And what has been happening also, that the NGO, the organization I run, has been working with the government in a partnership in trying to bring about all these significant changes in health and well-being of our citizens. You are aware that in Bangladesh we started with also organizing women for power, but then also we followed it up with access to microfinance, financial services, savings and credit. Bangladesh is quite famous for that. It is now exporting it throughout the world. But let me say that we have been doing it over the last 30 years. In BRAC, we have got 7 million borrowers, all women. And we disbursed this year $1.2 billion to these 7 million clients. But then, does microfinance work in all cases? We find that in many areas, microfinance generally works, but there are opportunities which are lacking in some areas of some villages where there is no opportunity to market the product. So even if you invest your money in a cow, you produce milk, but you can't sell your milk. So unless somebody collects your milk, you can't profit from it. So BRAC has gone into different kinds of businesses to help poor people who are our microfinance clients to market their products. So we have gone into dairy business in order to collect milk from 480,000 women that we have given loan for buying a cow. The similar way, people have gone into business in terms of vegetable cultivation. We have gone into business in producing vegetable seeds so that their income can improve from that. We have also found very poor women, when they first get microfinance funds and they start earning an income, very poor women tend to also give out their children to work in other people's homes. And the first thing that they do once they get money and start earning, they start bringing their children home. And this is what happens in most families, poor families. And they start sending them to school. So, so poverty has, over the years, have gradually declined in Bangladesh, and at this moment it's declining at the rate of about 2% a year. We have something like 36% of our population is still below poverty line, and some 10%, what we call extreme poor, who don't even benefit from microfinance. So we have been now designing a program for those people who do not benefit from microfinance because they cannot repay their loan. They cannot earn an income, sufficient income to be able to cover their family needs and repay their income. So for them, we have now developed a program of what we call ultra poor program, which includes not only loan but also grants, stipends, health services, education for children, combination of these for over a period of a year, for about 2 years, to get them onto a microfinance ladder to come out of poverty over a period of time. So these are some of the poverty reduction programs that we have been trying to do. We also looked at education in Bangladesh. When we started in 1980, we found that less than 60% of our children are enrolled in primary schools. And we looked at most of these children who are not enrolled tend to be also girls. So we started setting up schools in rural Bangladesh, one teacher school, most 30 children and one teacher. And most of the children, we wanted 70% of our children to be girls, because there was demand for schools for boys. But when we insisted that if you want to have a school in this village, you need to send your girls to the school, then of course we started getting the girls coming to our schools. So we now run 50,000 one-teacher schools and 1.5 million children in our primary schools. This is complementing the government efforts. We have 19 million children in the age group of 6 and 10, and the government can take 85% of them into the government school system. So the 3 million children who remains outside the government primary school system, we provide a last chance in education for 4 years, which covers 5 years of primary education. And so we have been running these schools for over last 20 years, and we hope to continue to do so as long as the government has not completed or at least taken all our children into their school system. The other thing that happens in primary education is that the children from the poorest families, particularly families whose both parents are illiterate, these children suffer from sort of unfair kind of vulnerability, in the sense that they drop out quickly. They don't have any help at home to help them. And also they are not prepared before going to school in class 1. So BRAC has now started 20,000 schools for children who come from illiterate families, to prepare them for primary education so that their dropout rate comes down. We found the dropout rate of children from families whose parents are both illiterate is about 30%, and we are trying to cut that down. So I see that my friend Mr. Amartya Sen is here. Amartya, I was just saying that about the BRAC primary schools which you visited, and healthcare. So primary education, we are also trying to help the secondary schools to improve their output in terms of quality of education. And we have been training teachers in secondary schools to improve quality education in about 2,000 schools. It's a pilot project we have taken, and hopefully if the program has the right, we succeed in improving the quality of secondary education, then we will expand the program to hopefully a larger number of schools. We have about 17,000 secondary schools which needs to be upgraded so that children get quality education in our secondary education system. We have also set up a university, and we are trying to also provide education to leaders in Bangladesh, in public health, in governance. The university has got three graduate schools, a School of Public Health, where we have collaboration with Harvard, Columbia, Johns Hopkins, Uppsala, and Amsterdam universities, where we have professors coming in to teach in our School of Public Health. And we also have similar collaboration with Harvard and other universities, Singapore National University, in providing governance education to mid-career civil servants in Bangladesh. So we have got a center for an Institute of Governance Studies in our university to help improve governance in Bangladesh. So having started as a non-governmental organization, also in a way trying to also influence government in terms of quality of service that they provide to our citizens. This has been one of our primary goal, to get our government to provide the best services to our people. So BRAC looked at on both angles. We started providing services which the government should provide and not able to do it. So basically it's not trying to, most people tell me that, why are you doing this primary education service when the government should provide this? My answer has always been that the government is trying to do its best, and we are just trying to complement whatever is being done nationally. And it is our duty to provide as much support to our state as possible. And secondly, that to improve government's ability to also deal with problems, that also needs to be done. So if the doctors need to be trained in public health because they have not had the opportunity to receive the kind of education needed to improve public health in Bangladesh, then BRAC might as well try and provide that. So we have also been acting on both directions, trying to serve the needs of the people and also trying to serve the needs of our government to be able to respond to the needs of our people. So, so these are I suppose the time allotted to me is over, and I would be very happy if there is any questions that I could respond to. Thank you.